it is my honour today to have Adam Creighton, who is the distinguished correspondent of the Australian in Washington, D.C., a very well-known position. Adam was educated at the University of New South Wales and Oxford University, and he was journalist in residence in the University of Chicago. He writes widely in books in The Economist and the Wall Street Journal. He's held positions with the Reserve Bank, APRA, and he was economic advisor to the then leader of the opposition, Tony Abbott. So it's a very distinguished background. Adam, will you be watching the coronation?
But yes, I will be seeing some of it. I think it'll be the morning here for me in Washington. Yes. It's
comfortably the evening, Saturday evening in Sydney, so it's the ideal time to be watching television. Adam, you've been critical of the authoritarianism which prevailed at the height of COVID. Do you think it could have been avoided?
Look, it's a difficult question. I think that whole 3 years was an insight really into our collective psyche and how, as a civilization, we panicked massively. And I don't think it really mattered what the constitutional arrangements were, by and large, whether you had a US-style system with a Bill of Rights or an Australian-Canadian style system where there's no Bill of Rights and just statute law or common law. I think you saw more or less the same responses across those jurisdictions, and those responses, in my view, were insane. I don't think that's too extreme an adjective to use to describe what happened. Certainly, none of the lockdowns, none of the mandates passed any sort of cost-benefit analysis that would have made any rational sense based on what we knew in March and April 2020. Well, and yet, we as a society pursued those policies, which were incredibly destructive.
Yeah, I agree with you. I do think, though, that if we'd had proper surveillance, if that had been allowed, for example, in New South Wales by the upper house, they cleverly avoided that, and we had ministers making regulations in the middle of the night. For example, we had one regulation which closed down the building industry for 2 weeks. And the chief medical officer said she didn't advise it. We had all sorts of unorthodox methods, and I think if that were tightened up, there would be an advantage. There needs to be a royal commission, but when I was asked about that by a Labor advisor, I said, well, it really depends on whom you appoint. You've got to appoint the right person.
Of course.
I'd say you'd appoint 3 good judges.
My fear is it's still too early to have a review like that, because what will inevitably happen is the response will essentially be whitewashed, I would say, because most of the people who would be appointed or could be appointed would probably have supported the measures at the time, whether on social media or privately. And so they'd feel compelled to support what we did. I mean, of course, there'd be some criticism around the edges, but I think by and large, the overall thrust of what we did would be supported. And so I think we still need a few years to go by until the current generation of decision makers has moved on, and there's less fear of criticising the government and all the academics and so-called experts who supported those policies.
Probably wise words. It would be terrible to have a royal commission and just be a whitewash of the whole thing.
Exactly.